want to take on responsibility. You want to take on the heaviest load that you can conceive of, that you might be able to move, because it gives your life nobility and purpose. And that offsets the tragedy. Because if you face the difficulties of the day properly, you actually ameliorate suffering, not only in the psychological sense, but because you make the world at least a less terrible place. And that's something, right? To move things away from hell is something, even if you're not, self-evidently moving forthrightly to heaven. To move things away from the worst they can be is, well, that's a noble goal in and of itself. It's strange that the maximum freedom comes with the adoption of a discipline and then also the adoption of responsibility. They know that most of the meaning that people experience in their lives is a consequence of adopting responsibility. That frees you up and everyone else around you in the long run. They're trying to make their immediate environment better, and it's working. It's like, well, I have a purpose, man. My life actually matters. I finally realized that, and I'm putting it into practice. And I'm bearing up under the heaviest load I can imagine. The power of that, you can't overstate the power of that for individuals to get their life together. The individual is an unbelievably powerful force. And every single person who gets their act together a little bit has the capacity to spread that around them. Dostoevsky, I think, said something like, every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. It's a crazy statement, right? But there's a level at which that's metaphysically true. It's failure to act often that's the most catastrophic. It's to not do the right thing when the situation presents itself. You're constantly in situations where you could do the right thing if you were willing to take a risk that's actually of relatively moderate size. And you know that you could take the risk, and you know that you should take the risk, and you don't. And that happens to people all the time. And then what happens is the thing that they didn't oppose grows a little bit, and they shrink a little bit. And that starts a loop, hey? And you say, well, how do you take responsibility for the world? And the answer is, well, you also have to do it with a certain degree of humility, because what do you know? I don't think that people have talked to young people about responsibility in any real sense and been on their side at the same time for like 50 years. And that's just too long, because most people find the meaning in their life through responsibility. Disagreeable men won't do anything they don't want to do. I don't think they're motivated. They're not looking at the world in a straight way. They're not taking responsibility for themselves or for their actions, their sexual actions, among others. They're not taking responsibility for their family. They're not looking at how they could contribute to the community. They don't understand the fact that they don't know anything. What do you want? You can have what you want, but you have to figure out what it is. If that's the situation, if I get no credit for bearing responsibility, you could bloody well be sure I'm not going to bear any. But then, your life is useless and meaningless, and you're full of self-contempt and nihilism, and that's not good. You can't have the conversation about rights without the conversation about responsibility, because your rights are my responsibility. That's what they are, technically. So you just can't have only half of that discussion. And the question is, well, what the hell are you leaving out? And the answer is, well, you're leaving out responsibility. And then the question is, well, what are you leaving out if you're leaving out responsibility? And the answer might be, well, maybe you're leaving out the meaning of life. Responsibility. That's what gives life meaning. It's like lift a load. Pick something up and carry it. Make it heavy enough so that you can think, yeah, well, useless as I am, at least I could move that from there to there. Well, some people do have it harder than others. And all of us have it very hard at some times in our lives. It's like, well, what's the alternative? You take responsibility for that and try to struggle uphill, because the alternative makes everything worse. They have to struggle uphill despite their excess burden. And it's responsibility, not guilt. It's not necessarily their fault. That's not the point. It's just asking them to stretch themselves to the point that they are capable of and seeing what happens. And that works. It works.